The green was a forested, productive forest area, and we took all the water from the yellow and sent it into the productive, which is city, and into a bunch of small wastewater treatment plants too for the gray, the black water. And then all the rest of the water was collected for a productive forest and farmland. And this is the final forested area use of it. The guy who was head of the Chinese company added as pathways all these crisscross. I was like, oh, you ruined it in plant, but anyhow. So I'll go into others. This is the Olympic Forest Park. The brown thing right there is a greenhouse treatment system. The entire thing is constructed, but the water systems were there, like the river going out on the right and the river here. And so that's the final built. This is the plan. And in plan, I don't have a pointer, but in plan, the river up there, there's a big treatment plant. It's very dirty and everything, so we would take water from that treatment plant, put it in a greenhouse system, which you'll see, feed it into the wetland there, put it into the lake, and it's all wetland down to, and then send it through a huge aqueduct to the point here where the bird's nest is, have a waterfall, and there are a lot of places that could have had water features pouring down into it, because it's very hot, and then send it back through a wetland. And it was in many ways a very perfect plan, and they let me know that it stayed as an option to the very last second. But the top half of that is owned by one district, and the bottom half is owned by another district. And the bottom half stood to get a lot of money selling to the Olympics their water. And the top half, so they would not agree. Furthermore, this is a really hard one to say, but the leaders of Beijing or China wanted a huge walkway through there, like in the old days when people would come in horses and banners, right? That's what they imagined. So we weren't allowed to put any trees or cooling system in this ginormous pathway. I mean, it was twice as big as this room is. I don't know, it's huge. And we weren't allowed to put anything in it to cool, not even way high up, like, those wonderful shapes, and it could create shade, because they still wanted this parade ground, which will never be used. So that's a diagram, a bit of a diagram of water pathways. And here's in plan, and this is pretty much built the way you see it. So the solar aquatic system is there, I'll show you. Some parts of this are successful and some parts aren't successful, but what really is not successful is that the engineer, even though when I left, because I left in 2006, I said, you must connect everything up. You must. And he still didn't. He thought the thing was, we'll save water by recycling the systems, and it's dying. So everything will look good for about 3 to 5 years, and then after that, because it's too polluted. They'll have other reasons. But this tertiary treatment system's really good, and but I haven't checked if it's still going. I really don't know. I know there's others around the country, so, and we were doing Sponge City workshops in 2001 and 2. So China's jumped. They've jumped. And they're somewhat ready for climate chaos. But they're definitely more ready than the United States. Far more ready. The emissions standards in Beijing are much higher. All buses and taxis are converted. There's still pollution, but they actually know that they can rein that in. So this is a piece I did in an arboretum, And it has all these texts here, and the water comes out there and there. It's a little living water drop in green marble. And it's and it recycles through its own cleaning system. Sometimes the temperatures get really hot here. It's an arboretum. I said to them, what about your source of water? And they said, oh, we have water forever, no problem, no problem. But anyway, I designed a low water use situation and recycled. And in the droughts of the last few years, it's the only thing that's still working. And it's really, this is the domestic part, and it tells you how much they use locally, domestically. 350 gallons per household. No, 450 gallons per household. And up the steps are 6 healthy water indicators, like mayflies, rotifers, fish, other things. So I just showed you pictures of one. I never do anything that can't be interactive and used. I don't do like, let's look at something. And probably should, because you make more money. But anyhow, this is the water gets distributed here. This is the industrial section, and I did this repetitive form, but it's very pretty. But on the broken wheel is how much water is used for steel. And the broken wheel is symbolic, of course. And this is the industrial section. So if you break things down worldwide, approximately 8% of water is used for domestic, 20 to 22 for industry, and 70 plus for agriculture. So big agricultural projects that don't use drip water are a very big problem, and also is what we put on our agriculture. And this one is how much water it takes to make a pound of beef. I think that's an incorrect statistic now. I think it's more like, 2,000 gallons maybe. I'm not sure. But at the time we researched it and we came up with that. So it's a learning place. I won another public art project. This is the site. It's a fantastic site. It was farmland returned to wild. And the money came from new wastewater treatment plant that was going to discharge water quality 2. Everyone knows that's swimmable and everything. And I talked to all the involved partners. I don't know that I had the influence. I think the combination of everything did, and that I insisted on them talking to each other. But the King County wastewater treatment people and water control took out the flood controls 2 years after I started designing for it. So it meant that most of the land would be flooded at one time or another. So I changed all my plans. And, this is 14 feet granite piece. I should have a picture being carved in China, so that the children and the lunches and everybody could have a dry place to eat. And it says, something, the dream of the river is to be free and alive. And the river was one of the last pristine salmon spawning rivers, so taking out the flood control was great, really great. And what they had done is they had the river, and then the floods would sort of go into separate wetlands that were separated from the river. So this really brought back a lot of biodynamism in the whole place. And this is a flood control. I'll show you the next picture. So the biggest happening in the valley was flood. And this piece was really successful because people could see how high the waters were coming up, and they wanted me to put markers on it. I don't know if they put markers on it, and the top is a raptor roost. But it was 58 acres was turned to wild, and it's really wild, and it's full of wildlife, and it's fantastic. And then I cut glacial boulders and etched this into them. The snail is a sign of a healthy site, and then salmon, the salmon bones, and then the apex of the human heart. So for 4 years I worked in a really, the poorest district in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's an industrial city. It was, big steel mills and everything. And this community had gone very poor because the steel mills closed. Similar situations in this country. And they were very suspicious of outsiders. They had for themselves created energy, water, and food self-sufficiency. Great plan. I mean, they have a dime. And to this day, I don't understand why Barrow won't at least initiate its own independent plan, regardless of money. Who's waiting for whom? Why? Why wait? What's the government going to do? They're just going to get poorer. And right now, they're just going to get more desperate, as far as I can tell. And but the man who was head of programming he actually supported me to be there. And I would just give 5-minute pitches on repurposing your rainwater. One woman got her water bill down 70%. And when you're poor, that's a lot. But, and we plan to capture the rainwater up there and repurpose it for parks and civic center, maybe car washing. I asked the people that, the city, they use drinking water to wash the streets. Come on. Come on. I don't know what you do here, but that's what we do. Oh, you're running out of drinking water? Really? Really? But, I mean, you can do so much with rainwater, and it's fairly clean. Even if you're in an industrial city, you can filter out a lot of the toxins. Plus, if you let the first rain go off the roof, it cleans the roof, takes the toxins out, and the rest of the water you collect. There's so many ways to do it, and yet everyone's ignorant about this. Why? I know why it is in my country. The wastewater treatment plant wants to take all the water and sell it back to you. It's illegal in certain places to collect water. But there's so many ways you could take it, at least to water lawns and clean cars or whatever it is. So I taught mapping. And it took a while. I taught mapping to people who never thought about anything except a street map. And pretty soon, they were empowered enough to complain and be their own advocates. Just exactly what a top-down system doesn't want. They don't want people to be knowledgeable enough to be their own advocates. So right now, where I am is mapping. Teach everybody mapping. Have public mapping. Teach children how to map. Have them follow the rainwater. Have them follow the flows. Have them think about where they could change it, interrupt it. It's easy. It's fun, too. It's really fun. So we mapped. GIS is very helpful when you get to this level. The pink dots are where the major amount of water collects. That's a pipe system. You can get the topo map, the under the topography, the pipes, how much rainfall is collected where and when, and how you can repurpose it. So I think, that's my thinking, here's where the most rainfalls were in that neighborhood. We planned a wonderful civic park. I got $500,000, and then the superstructure stepped in and booted me out faster than I could say hello. So after 4 years, they did not like it that I empowered very poor people. And in that group was an engineer who'd been engineer for the Heinz. He didn't even say he was an engineer until after I knew him for 2 years, and he's like, I totally know what to do. I know where we could send the water over a cliff and create, electricity or whatever we need right there. And there's so many possibilities all around us. And you get to see what they are. As landscapers, you get to see where the possibilities are. And so anyway, I found this in somebody sent it to me. It's an ancient Chinese text. And for me, it kind of says it all. Like, water is the foundation of love. If you love somebody, you give them water. You don't steal their water. You don't bottle their water. You don't sell their water. Oh yeah, and bring back the drinking water fountain and stop buying bottled water. because then you have a public supply of the drinking water. So bring it back everywhere. In New York it disappeared in the 90s. That's dirty, it's a public health. No, that's not why they took them out. They took them out so the water bottling companies you would have to pay. And okay, that's what I like it. Questions?
Extraordinary. Who's going to carry the torch now? Oh.
No, seriously, questions, really.
Yeah.
I'm not a genius. I'm kind of stubborn, and I'm persistent, and I'm curious.
Yes, what Betsy just was talking about the using drinking water to wash the streets reminds me of another project that we're involved in called the Science Walden Project with a South Korean university. This is a project which looks at a way of turning of a system to use your excrement, your human excrement, as a biofuel and as a soil improver. Yeah. And at the same time, when you think about it, 50% of the world lacks clean drinking water. The other 50% flushes down the toilet.
Yeah. Well,
why? It's one thing to clean the streets, but to use, when you think about it, to use like water to just transport excrement. Yeah. That seems a crazy thing.
It actually doesn't work. Pee is the best nutrient in the world. There's no fertilizer that's better than piss. And if you dilute it, it might have estrogens in it, thanks to our wonderful birth control systems. And, but poop does not degrade in water. It will degrade in soil in about 4 months and reproduce soil. So you can go online and there's all kinds of people now who have figured out, like some even new buildings in China have automatic separation at the toilet level. They also have in the high-rise buildings places where you put your biodegradable food waste down one thing and it can be converted into dirt in 5 hours. So these things exist. I met a guy, there's a company called Biologique, which he introduced me to, that he's doing very integrated systems, energy, food, water. He's probably doing one outside Manchester soon. The company works all over the world. So these things are being done, and any places you can integrate the landscape design with some of them, you're creating an innovation. You're creating a very needed innovation. It doesn't pay to have a wastewater treatment plant kilometers away, because it takes a lot of water to wash everything to that plant. So if we had small plants nearby, we know how to make small, very integrated processes, and they're nearby, then the community understands the wastewater system. Systems within the community for energy and regeneration are hooked up to it, and people get concerned then about what's going into it. So they might get concerned about what you wash with, what detergents do you use, which makes a big difference to what the plant has to deal with. And right now we're kind of, we're in like, toss it all down, oh, I'll use this and that, and a lot of things are really hard on the environment. They're hard to clean. So people need familiar, in-close, integrated systems. Big cities can have them. They really can. It would be much better than thinking this one water place has to deliver clean water across the 20 miles of London or New York City. So small, local, even in cities, modular things are much, much better. And what's so good about it is then we all feel responsible and connected. And we're going to need to do that. With climate chaos, we're just going to need to do it. You wouldn't want you know, if you have one big thing and for some reason that one got wiped out by a storm, you know, whereas if they're small, they're more easily repairable. You don't have a huge infrastructure to try and take care of. Pipes decay no matter what. They will, they go. So, you know, and I don't know, I think 30% of the pipes in Beijing leak horribly. And they don't have enough water. When I first went, people were really into repairing them and, you know, changing all the toilets, and the government immediately just, no. The byline was, it's kind of like, you know, we're the greatest democracy in the world. Well, we're the greatest, you know, deliver us of clean water or something. And it's none of it's true. So, and now is the time to change, because things are old. Infrastructures are old. And at least they're old here, I'm sure. They're old in my country. So let's change now. Yeah. So other questions? You're nodding.
I was kind of thinking, you know, river catchments or river systems.
Right.
Never, well, certainly in Europe, cross several borders and several districts, kind of thing. What's your best approach to kind of take that holistic view? And did you just kind of brush heads together, or was it a case of, you know?
Well, I talked to one biohydraulic guy. He's Italian. He was working in London out of a big company. And as I understand, there's a collaborative mapping process going on in Europe.
EU into it.
Yeah. So that's, and I thought that was great. We don't have a collaborative between our states. We do not have a collaborative mapping process. So I think that's great, and I think that's the way the whole world should go, because at some point we're going to have to agree as a world. It's not possible to take one part of the world and save it. So we really, I mean, our thinking has to change radically, and that's part of Brexit and Trump and everything, is there's a whole group of people who are taking the opportunity, well, they don't want it. It's hard to change. It's really hard. I remember when I changed from my meat and potatoes diet to something a little more flexible. It's really hard to figure out what to cook. So it's hard to change, you know. And but we're gonna have to. And I think it's up to the younger generation to almost form these teams, or us here, to say, okay, we're going to be part of and I don't know how to label it or name it. No money, that's okay, there's the internet. That we're part of a team of people that agree that facing climate change and doing what's necessary is our 1-point program. It doesn't have to be any more than that to start forcing the paradigm, just like, you know, Resist Extinction is trying to force the paradigm. That's going to happen in London on Monday, big demonstration. That's one other way to go, but that's very local. What, you know, so, but I always like to dream about a lot of people getting together to do the right thing. I really do. And the right thing can be everything from just starting your kitchen. I mean, it's really like inviting people to put their brain on saving this earth. We already have 70% of the species have gone extinct. And it's estimated a whole lot more. So it's the largest, it's called the 6th extinction. And it's true, that's not a made up word for no reason. I put the thing on pulses because, like, the rainforest has been depleted sufficiently that the moisture coming from it no longer comes up to the coast of California. The redwoods used to live off that moisture. They have been chopped down so much that they no longer collect moisture to send into the coast of California. All of California has been changed into a pipe shed. It's no longer a watershed. So the disasters that you're reading about there, which they're going, oh, poor us. I'm just like, you know, you engineered it, unengineer it. And it's going to be unpleasant. And instead, they're building higher dams and bigger reservoirs instead of rehydrating the land. but also the loss from the rainforest is huge. The Amazon estuary has been sufficiently messed with that it no longer sends the same pulse over to the coast of Spain. The Chesapeake estuary has been jetted so much it doesn't send silt down to keep building Florida. Now, those are just some of the disruptions, but the disruptions in the basic pulses that we live in have been radically changed. And of course they've changed. People say, oh, the planet's always changing. That's true, but it's never changed this fast and at human hands. And we feel sick in it. We don't feel well in it. So that's also impacting people. A lot of people who are weaker are dying and things like that. There's one horrifying statistic of how many billion people will die within 15 years. That's horrifying. I hope it's not true. I don't want to repeat it. But, so the imperative that we get together, and I mean that in a really big way. Everybody gets together, engineers, artists, and the other thing I learned in the Pittsburgh process is that the Heinz Foundation wanted to pay a bunch of experts. We got a $250,000 grant. That's huge in my world. But they wanted to pay the bunch of experts, such and such. They did not want to give any money to the community members to participate. Now, the project was impossible without the community members. So this very odd conversation went on for a long period of time. And finally, I just said, look, this isn't right. We can't do this project without the community members. Each person gets paid $20 an hour. Now, the experts do get paid a little more than that, but not a lot. So, and that, in a way, I challenge the entire class system. People don't like that. But in fact, that's reality. So in the Lost Plateau, there was the World Bank, and the World Bank scientists could not figure out what to do. Well, they're paid about $200 an hour. And they're doing subsistence farming where everybody ekes a little living out of the land, and there's 1 billion people. I don't know how many, I'm sorry. And finally they said, we know what to do, but you have to pay us because we have to be able to feed our families. And we will do it. You pay us, and then we own the land. Look it up, LOESS, Lost Plateau. It's fabulous. The whole place was just ruined. Gullies, desert. And it's completely, the big river came back. Everything came back. There's a project in Spain similar. So I know people are exporting this, but probably not fast enough. For that, I would join a team of people if some rich person would say, here, go, and we'd amass a team of whoever wants to come, and we're going to do these restoration projects locally. We just help. You're just a catalyst, but you probably need a catalyst, right? Yeah. And then, which is what I consider myself. I've started a lot of things with something that tiny. Shockingly, one of my students did the river cleanup of the San Antonio River. It's an annual event now in the San Antonio Rivers. Generally, that's how I end up working. So, but I love doing large scale. Really, it's so hopeful. It's so hopeful, and suddenly very depressed people aren't sitting there going, "It's hopeless. We can't do anything." But put one foot in front of the other. And all these refugees, mostly climate refugees, they are. No water, some big dam got built by the World Bank or by whatever, and they don't have water. So, there has to be a big enough movement that it can get the people that are buying up the rainforest for more wood to stop, that the indigenous people that live there get to continue what they do. I've spent a lot of time with indigenous people, and they're on the front lines. They're fighting for the planet with their lives. They're really on the front lines. and they all support each other around the world. I went to the best conference that I've ever gone to, 1,000 indigenous people, from the Amazon to New Zealand. Could you get your rivers the rights of people, the way the Maori did? Could you get here in Britain nature having its rights, the same as Bulgaria and Ecuador? I mean, those are fantastic fights to have, because it stops the destruction. Could you all decide to, I don't like doing this because I like new clothes. I didn't get to have them when I was little, but I have a lot of friends who won't buy anything new. Just stop the materialistic imperative. Maybe don't go to Starbucks.
What do you think about the housing needs? That's a real tricky one that we have to face as a challenge, because people need places to live and land to develop, and we help develop that land, but obviously we're taking away natural resources in that way.
I don't know, you guys get to figure it out.
Yeah.
How much do you need to live in? How
Yeah.
big do you need to live in?
The city versus the...
Cities are more efficient,
Yeah.
actually. I just think the mistake in the cities is having one big service situation. So, try and break it down. If there's a vacant lot, and you can make the wastewater treatment there, or a garden. Like in New York, unfortunately, every mayor has systematically eliminated more and more the empty land. And Manhattan's really unpleasant. I know you all find it exciting, but I find it a disaster. And I do have a lot of friends who are now not buying things, buying clothes. It's pretty much how much do you need to live with,
They did an equation, didn't they? How much actual land?
No, start the discussion. The thing is just to have the discussion, make people conscious. My indigenous friend says to everybody, well, we didn't want you here, we didn't invite you here, but why don't you give back something? Decide to give back. Because we give it to, the rich people take it for their own holidays, they don't give back anything. They're living off the land. So give back something. Take a little bit that you need. What do you need to live on? She lives happy with a house, a kitchen, a toilet, and a little bit of land to grow on, very little. You can grow a lot on a little bit of land, probably for, under $2,000 a month.
The thing is, you're probably preaching to the converted here. Most people in this room would
I may
agree
be
with
preaching
you.
to converted, but they go out and preach.
But the problem, I think the problem that then comes from that is that we have no power whatsoever in our developments. We have zero sort of control over what's put in. We're a tiny cog in a very, very big machine when it comes to developments, and nobody in the developing world gives a shit what landscape architects.
What do you think I am by myself? Come
No,
on.
absolutely, yeah.
I mean, what I have to just say to you is what's your excuse today, okay? If you have to take to the streets, take to the streets. But what do you think I am? I'm a woman, as the Chinese leader said, you have 3 strikes against you. You're not Chinese, you're old, and you're female. So, I'm sorry, but we're all up against the same thing. The corporate machine is huge, but it depends on us. If you don't participate in it, something will happen.
But would you not say then as well that actually China, for instance, is a place that has changed most, but it's also a country that doesn't deal in any way with political activism in that sense. So
You'll be surprised.
They're sort of rapidly changing in amazing ways,
No, you'd be surprised. I got to live with the Chinese, on the ground with the Chinese. They know how to be politically active and never say a word. You will be surprised. And that your opinion comes from here, and it almost has nothing to do with their. I'm sorry, I don't want to hurt your feelings. I hope.
No.
But I've been up against this conversation for 30 years. I've had people stand up and shout at me, what about the Great Dam, when I said nice things about China. And I say, what about Hartford Dam? The biggest dam, its radioactivity is spreading into the waters, and the Hannaford Dam, who okayed the big dam in China the Chinese people opposed it. It was a Canadian dam builder who said that you can build it, and somebody who very much admired Mao Zedong and was a very good bureaucrat in the Chinese government decided to get it done. Everyone knows it's a huge error, but you'd just be surprised at what's happening underground there all the time. And actually, I'm sure that's happening here. I know it's happening in the US, you know, but we all have, me too. My excuse is I'm too old, but I'm not. And, you know, I'll tell you, this is maybe a stupid story, but I have a granddaughter and I'm walking her home from school and she's 4 years old. And she says to me, Granny, why are people throwing their trash on the street? And I say, they don't know any better. And she said, wrong answer. They couldn't find the garbage can. Wrong answer. Everything I said was wrong answer. So I said, Anya, why? And she said, they need to cry. Yeah, and so probably we all just need to really cry and rile against what we're up against here. To face it, because our homes are comfortable. We get hot water, we flush a toilet, we have enough food, and all of that. And you know, and so we follow the rules to get a salary. It's going to take more than that to change this. And it might end up being fun.
I don't think
Sorry,
Go
just
ahead.
one quick one. I was just wondering, you've obviously proven like the ecological value of your projects over time. I think really to convince people that we tend to work with, the only thing they care about is money at the end of the day. I was just wondering if you've got any proven sort of statistics or anything that's come out of your projects, and I think that's
No, and I also really, I rage against the materialistic imperative. Because I know all the brains in the United States, including mine, are occupied by that, and so are yours. But if you're that farmer in India, it's not occupied that way. It's not. So we are all, you know, I'm a lot of times asked to be like the only person on a government, maybe a couple of days or something on the environment. And everyone's talking about bottom line this and bottom line that, improve that. You know, finally I just said, I'm the poorest person in this room. There are 300 people there. But for me, the bottom line is the health of the people in Harlem. You know, and it didn't change what people did, but it was 1 second of uh-oh. You know, so what's your bottom line? Did they need to make all the money they were making, those people, so that, you know, off a commission? Did they really need that? You know, or not? It's like what happened with Boeing, that they didn't put in the thing to make sure those planes were safe. It was $80,000 per plane, and they didn't do it. How often are we doing that? The one thing, or one step that might up something. So that's materialistic imperative. And we're all in it. We've all been defined by it for the last 150 years, and it's just out of control. You know, it doesn't matter how much of the planet we eat up as long as we meet those economic bottom lines. It doesn't matter. And you're on an island that you're pretty much preserving, and like the US is a big island. We live off 20% of the rest of the world. I don't know how much England lives off of. That's the statistic to have in mind. When will Britain live off itself? Can you live off yourself? Almost, you know?
in a few months.
What?
Find out in a few months.
Do you want to even live off yourself? You know, I don't think so, but I'm exaggerating. But, you know, I mean, New York can't live off itself at all. Can the United States? Of course we could. We don't have to get 20% of everything else. It used to be 30%, now it's gone to 20, off the rest of the world by bilking people in China and Africa, you know, paying people low wages in China to make our clothing, you know, which Nike does or whatever they do. Do we really have to do that? No. So Like, how do we uncomplicate our brains?
But Betsy, just give us hope. Tell us a bit more about the last chapter of your book.
Oh, the last chapter of my book. Well, I've written a book called People's Water, and a whole lot of it is to say, you can do this, and these are steps, and these are some of the steps, and at the end of it, though, I really say that if one person acts, it gives hope to other people, and then other people act, and you generate hope, and that it will take all of us collaborating to do this. And when I was up in Barrow, I noticed that in any session that I ran, because David kept pushing me forward, I didn't let people crosstalk, and I didn't let people say you can't do that, or raise all the issues in doing that, because it's so hard to generate hope in this system. But I know that when I do something where everyone gets to have hope, because you get to have your own mind without having to answer anybody. I mean, we could go around here and do it, like you don't have to answer, you don't have to defend your ideas, you get to envision as big as you can, and there's no criticism. And then there's things that start to pop up, like maybe you have to do that basic process 2, 3, 4, 5 times. But I know that I started an organization called No Limits. This is something called we should start at No Limits for the Earth, but there was No Limits for women artists. Okay, I said to the women artists, you are not going to sit around over tea and complain about how horrible it is, and what you can't do, and how oppressed you are from your husband, or all this, or being a mother. You get together, and you listen to each other, and you say what your greatest idea is, how you're going to begin it, why you would give up, and how you're not going to give up. Well, guess what? Over 50% of those people got major careers within 6 months. The society's structured for you to give up. That's the structure, that's the message. So you can't not give up by yourself. To not give up, you need a group of people around you that are trying to think differently, that have a slice of time in the day, or the week, or once a month, when you really have support and you really don't give up. And you'll be surprised what you think of to do. You will be surprised. So that I ran that for 20 years until I went to China. Yeah.
Not giving up is a little bit on my mind at the moment. I mean, this magazine ran. As you may know, the Arts Council is developing a strategy for the next 10 years. IPCC projections focus on these crucial next 10 years. So I wrote to the chairman of the Arts Council saying, hey, wouldn't it be neat if you could give a special strategic fund for the arts to engage with the climate change issues? I'm having a real struggle.
Yeah, they won't do it,
I mean,
unless all of you ask for it.
and you'd think, yeah, maybe that's a good idea.
Yeah.
We haven't had a grant from the Arts Council since 2013. You probably don't work for any money. I don't work for any money.
Hey, no limits for planet
But
Earth.
it's really tough. And I've just written another letter to the Arts Council saying, look, if you're not going to have a strategy for the next 10 years, why don't you help us to set up a new kind of UK-wide or global fund, to support it by other philanthropists and foundations and whatever, to create something like an annual equivalent of the Turner Prize. One, it wouldn't go to an individual, it would go to a collective of people working together. It wouldn't be for the past, it would be for the future. That's the idea. But it's you think people might listen to me. No one else in the Arts Council. Like I said, he said, I can't communicate to any of these people. Thankfully, I know Nick Soroja. I think he's a good chap. Kind of my generation. I'm hoping, he can do something I'm quite desperate. I'm quite desperate. You can imagine. I've written 4 grant applications, and they're good ones, you know, talking about all this sort of stuff, you know. But you get the standard letter back. Oh, there we are.
So,
You haven't done enough public engagement.
no.
Well, it's just me at the moment. Anyway,
Don't give up, Clive.
Any
Thank you
other
very much
major
for
questions?
attending.
I have to go, I'm really sorry.
You had a question, did you?
No, I have to.
Oh,